New details in the case against Hunter Biden. Find out what made Rudy Giuliani go to the police. Plus,
the Biden lockdown. He's willing to lock you down. You guys aren't even open yet. What the hell is going on with your state? You know, Florida's open. All this. Florida had a surge. Great governor. Surge. Went down. Arizona had a surge. Went down. Great governor.
the Trump and Biden campaigns are stream-rolling towards Election Day. Details on the latest from both campaigns and who has the fundraising lead in the final 13 days. Finally, we'll take a deep dive into the economy today. Those stories and so much more on this Wednesday edition of News On. Rudy Giuliani, one of President Trump's private attorneys, has reported to Delaware police with concerns that materials on a laptop purportedly tied to Hunter Biden contain evidence of possible child endangerment. Giuliani, a former U.S. attorney and New York City mayor, confirmed last night that he went Monday to a local police department in Wilmington to report his concerns of child endangerment and sexual exploitation. Law enforcement officials in Delaware told Just the News that Giuliani's concerns have been forwarded now to the State Department of Justice. Meanwhile, Joe Biden has responded by calling the effort a smear campaign.
This is the same garbage Rudy Giuliani, Trump's henchman. It's a last-ditch effort in this desperate campaign to smear me and my family.
So for much more on this developing story, I'm pleased to welcome in the editor-in-chief of Just the News and the person who broke this story for us here on Real America's Voice, John Solomon. Good to see you again, John.
Great to be with you.
So what's the latest when it comes to this story that you can share with our viewers?
Yeah, listen, it's a pretty extraordinary act, right? We're 2 weeks from the election day. The president's private attorney and the former NYPD commissioner, Bernard Kerik, so Rudy Giuliani and Bernard Kerik, travel to Delaware and they file a police report. And the police report is based on photos and emails and text messages suggesting that there was sexually explicit material on the hard drive that's purportedly from Hunter Biden's laptop, and that it suggests that a minor child wasn't somehow endangered by the activity described on the hard drive. They haven't told me who the alleged perpetrators are, who the child is, and of course we would protect the child's identity anyways, but the fact that they took this act and they reported it, and then police then immediately reported it upstream from Newcastle, Delaware, or Newcastle County, Delaware, to the state Delaware Justice Department suggests that there's something here. The timing is always concerning to people when you're 2 weeks out from election, but at the same time, Delaware law requires all adults who have a reasonable suspicion that a child may be in danger, either from sexual exploitation, abuse, any of those things, neglect, that they have an obligation under the Delaware law to report this. So that's what Rudy Giuliani says motivated him, and I think the second piece of the puzzle is I was able to talk to Bernard Kerik this morning. He confirms he went along for this meeting, former NYPD commissioner. He says the total evidence on this hard drive really creates a national security concern because the Biden family could be blackmailed, bribed, influenced, pressured because of the damaging information on this hard drive. And he's calling for a national security assessment of what liabilities or vulnerabilities the Biden family has should Joe Biden be elected president. So that's the latest as of this morning.
Yeah, we're running out of time, but real quickly, can you give us an idea? We're hearing the age of this child was 14 years old. Anything in regards to the pictures, what they depicted at all?
I have some information on that. I don't think it's appropriate to talk about it. We are talking about a minor child whose privacy deserves to be protected. But the overall thrust is that there was activity between an adult and a child that should not have occurred, and it was of a sexual nature, and it was enough to concern.
Did that involve Hunter Biden?
Police commissioner.
Did that involve Hunter Biden?
Mr. Giuliani wouldn't say who the two people were in the photos. He's keeping that private and letting police investigate it. So we don't know whether it was a Biden family member or someone else, but something on this hard drive caused them to go to Delaware. So it must be someone in Delaware, right? The crime must be in Delaware, or the alleged crime. But they're not saying who was on the photos other than to say that they believe what was portrayed was criminal in nature and needed to be reported to the police.
All right, we know you'll continue to follow that story and bring us the very latest developments. John
Sure
Solomon,
will.
Just the News, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to have you.
Pleasure.
We are now just 13 days to the White House. President Trump headed to North Carolina today after holding a campaign rally in Pennsylvania yesterday as reports of coronavirus cases continue to rise in that state.
We will crush the virus. We're doing that. We're crushing the virus. Look at our numbers compared to Europe. You know, they always said, oh, Europe, Europe, Europe. Look at our numbers compared. And we had the biggest of any country, the biggest comeback. We came back faster. We went down less economically, came back faster. If you want depression, doom and despair, vote for Sleepy Joe Biden.
And the president receiving some complaints just 9 days after the White House Coronavirus Task Force urged the Keystone State to maintain aggressive community mitigation efforts. Former Vice President Joe Biden, meanwhile, is off the campaign trail to prepare for tomorrow's final presidential debate. Meantime, Senator Kamala Harris tells voters now's the time for the country to work together.
In Florida, you know that right now, people are hurting. People are suffering. In Florida right now, 1 in 8 Floridians is describing members of their household as being hungry. We're in the midst of a hunger crisis in America. In Florida right now, 1 in 5 Floridians is describing themselves being unable to pay their rent in September. But yet this man, Donald Trump, would like you to believe everything is okay. Because you see, his measure of the success of the economy is based on the stock market. Our measure is based on how working people are doing.
And many polls show former Vice President Biden ahead of President Donald Trump. We're going to be talking about who has the biggest war chest. Also, who is now finally going to be stumping for Joe Biden. He's heading the campaign trail today. We're going to discuss more about that and also what's next for Amy Coney Barrett when it comes to the Supreme Court, what the committee, when they're expected to vote, also when the full Senate is expected to vote. But still ahead on this edition of News On, more companies look to slash their workforce. Find out which ones next. You're watching News On. And welcome back to News On. I'm Miranda Khan. Another airline announces job cuts. Cathay Pacific says it plans to cut nearly 6,000 jobs. The company says its corporate restructuring will save about $65 million per month. The majority of those cuts will be in Hong Kong, the carrier's headquarters. The airline's regional carrier, Dragon, will also cease operations effective immediately as the pandemic continues to decimate travel. The CEO of that company says they expect next year's passenger capacity to fall below 50% of the levels it had last year. The world's largest theater chain warns that it may have to file for bankruptcy soon. AMC Theaters disclosed in a filing yesterday with the Securities and Exchange Commission that it has a deal for additional sources of liquidity. That deal is with Citigroup Global Markets and Goldman Sachs to sell 15 million shares. The theater says if the agreement does not pan out, it could likely face Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Earlier this month, AMC announced it could run out of money by the end of the year. Now, despite these challenges, the movie theater chain has said it will remain open. Disneyland is likely to be closed for several more weeks following long-awaited pandemic guidance released by the state of California just yesterday. Theme parks are allowed to reopen only when the county where they are located is outside the red tier of the state's 4-tier opening system. Because of the outbreak in Orange County, where Disneyland happens to be based, it could be weeks or even months before the coronavirus criteria is actually met. Disney blasted the latest guidance as arbitrary and had already blamed state restrictions for the layoffs of thousands of its workers. The entertainment giant reopened its theme parks in Florida in July and says its COVID-19 prevention protocols are working well there. Now, prior to this extended closure, the original Disney theme park had only closed for JFK's assassination and the September 11th terror attacks, just to put that in perspective. Well, here on the network, when we have questions, we like to go to the experts to find out answers for you so you can make better decisions for you and your family. And today, there's been a lot of stories, as you just heard, making economic headlines. And we want to know exactly how the industries that we just spoke about will be able to hopefully save some of those jobs for their employees and how the economic plans from each candidate could impact the future of the economy. Because again, we are just one day away from the second and final presidential debate. That's why I'm thrilled to welcome in Elaine Parker. She is the Chief Communications Officer of the Job Creators Network, and George C., the CEO of Anandel Capital. Thank you both for joining us here today on News On. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
All right, so obviously not the best news, and I know a lot of people say no news is good news, but we do like to report some positive news, and we were able to do that yesterday, thankfully, when it came to Target. And you do have companies like Amazon who are doing really well, but obviously it's not good news for a lot of companies. We reported just a couple weeks ago that 50% of the restaurants in New York, for example, are not expected to survive the pandemic. So I want each of you to just kind of weigh in. Is some of this just par for the course? How much of it is actually connected to the pandemic, and what do you kind of foresee happening in the weeks and months ahead? Let's start with ladies first. Go ahead.
Well, thanks for having me. As we look at some of these states that have been reopening in a more aggressive way, I actually am in the state of Florida, where Disney World is and is open and operating under CDC guidelines. And Governor DeSantis has taken a very aggressive stance in obviously taking precautions, but opening up the state because small business has been hurt so badly, under the shutdowns across the country. But when you compare Disney World here in Orlando and the policies of the governor in California and Disneyland and how they are suffering under draconian measures and orders, you can see a stark difference in how one state can open up, and that states that are opening up are coming back at a much faster rate. We want to see our small businesses open. Half of them that have shut down may not ever reopen again. And, we need our small business owners out there because they actually create 70% of the jobs. Amazon can't create all those jobs.
Yeah, having said that, though, when Amazon did its Prime Day, it was small businesses and those medium businesses that actually performed very well. Just the News, who we partner with here on Real America's Voice, George, has done a couple stories about this. One of which was recent, just a few days ago, talking about how red states were outperforming blue states. But I understand that this is very tricky now with all these reports coming out with COVID now, with 31 states seeing a rise in COVID cases. So how do you balance that out, George?
That's a great question. And before I answer that, I want to come back to your question about how normal this is. Well, it's completely abnormal. I mean, if you look back in the last 100 years of American history, we've had a pandemic 102 years ago, and we've had a recession of this magnitude 80 years ago in the Great Depression. So we're having two of those events at once. And so a lot of these industries, whether it's restaurants, whether it's airlines, whether it's travel and leisure, real estate, a lot of those aren't going to come back anytime soon. And there's going to be permanent losses of businesses. And it's a very sad time for the country. I think we have so much more clarity these days over the virus than we did in February and March. We still really didn't know what it looked like, how quickly it would spread, what the effects would be. We now know that the most vulnerable in our population, which is over 80 or with pre-existing conditions that make you more susceptible to really get really sick with COVID, those people should stay isolated and stay away from big crowds. But everybody else needs to get back to work and wear a mask around other people and wash your hands and socially distance and do all the obvious things. But unfortunately, the virus has become purely political for a whole lot of people, both on the right and the left. And on the left, in blue states, they're basically keeping people in the bunker, not letting people go back to work, and they're going to have ramifications that last for years on that. And they just want the federal government to bail them out and throw money at the problem forever. And we just don't have the balance sheet to keep doing that. So we're going to have to make some hard decisions soon about getting back at it and getting America back to work and letting people get back into their lives, but taking the right precautions at the same time.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to, remains to be seen if we'll actually see a COVID relief bill, considering the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, set her own deadline for yesterday, and we still have yet to see one. Many people are expecting that won't happen until after Election Day. We only have a couple minutes remaining, but real quickly, I do want to discuss the campaigns, if we can, for a moment. You still have Biden's campaign saying that people will not be taxed, will not see an increase, rather, in taxes if they make under $400,000 a year. There's some speculation on whether or not that is true. There's also a speculation on the flip side with the president saying that he wants to eliminate and when it comes to those payroll taxes. But some people are questioning whether or not that will hurt people who heavily depend on Social Security. Again, we only have about 45 seconds for each of you to be able to speak on this. So real quickly, should people be concerned, Elaine, on either end?
Look, Biden has a $4 trillion spending package that he's bringing forward, and he has promised to repeal the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And even if he's claiming it's for people only over $400,000, he's going to hurt job creators. And when you hurt job creators, you typically hurt the people who work for them. And so this is an important factor for employees all across the country to understand.
And George, real quickly, 30 seconds to you. Again, the president hasn't released a full economic plan, but Biden has. Which one of these are you in favor of and why?
Well, I think that, to your point, politicians lie all the time. And the former vice president saying that there will be no tax increase for middle-class people is an outright lie. He's saying he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. And they cut taxes anywhere from $1,000 to $4,000 for middle-class and lower-middle-class Americans. So that's a tax increase by definition. I think the payroll tax issue is more complicated. We need major entitlement reform. And so that's the bigger issue there, and no one's had the guts to tackle that yet. I hope President Trump will if he gets reelected. I hope President Biden will if he gets elected, although I doubt the Democrats would do that.
All right, we're going to actually try to delve into this a little more in the days ahead. Thank you both for joining us here on News On. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much.
There is still much more to come here on News On, the most important segment of the day, in fact, and that is when we share your voice. We asked you what you think about some of the changes to this upcoming presidential debate. We'll have those answers next. switching my hair. And welcome back to News On. I'm Miranda Khan. As we've discussed earlier, Trump and the Biden campaign are in full swing as we barrel towards Election Day. And while Joe Biden himself has been at home in Delaware, as he says, prepping for the debate, President Trump has been hitting the campaign road pretty hard, pretty intense schedule these past few days. Today he will head to North Carolina, and that's where we find our very own Real America's Voice correspondent Amanda Head standing by there live, where the president is expected to hold a rally. A lot of stories making headlines in that state, Amanda. There was one about the governor having this hot mic there saying that, you know, he expected the Democratic senator to just squeeze on by and make a win there. And of course, that Democratic senator is at the center of a sex scandal, if you will. And then you have on the Republican side, a Republican senator who was battling COVID just as the president was. And I know the president was in Pennsylvania yesterday in Erie, and he was expected to be accompanied by the First Lady, but apparently she's still ill and suffering from the effects of COVID-19 and decided to stay at home. So a lot of interesting stories today. What can you tell us? You got quite the backdrop there for this rally.
So a lot of factors, some of which you just articulated, are pouring into what the results will ultimately be here, not on November 3rd, but on November 12th. The Fourth Circuit of Appeals, oh goodness, lots of noise, sorry, ruled, I believe, in a 9-3 verdict that ballots will be accepted as long as they are postmarked by November 3rd. They will be accepted until November 12th. You've also got some other factors, including, like you mentioned, those comments by Roy Cooper. We've got a lot of hot mic moments lately. Troy Aikman, everybody make sure your mic is off when you're talking, okay? But also you have to factor in the fact that the RNC convention was supposed to be here. That was hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of dollars of revenue for folks here in Charlotte who obviously did not get that because the RNC convention was moved. You've also got, as you highlighted in that race between the Republican incumbent Tom Tillis and Cal Cunningham, these leaked text messages between Cal Cunningham and a California woman who is not his wife. He admitted to having an extramarital affair and claims that he has, soothed that over with his family and his personal life. The margin between the two of those, Tom Tillis and Cal Cunningham, was much larger, but it has narrowed in the last few weeks since those text messages came to light. As long as we're talking about margin, 2.3 points for Joe Biden. That is the Real Clear Politics average, which favors Joe Biden by just a couple of points. That's within the margin of error. So this state, as Real Clear Politics has labeled it, it is definitely a toss-up.
Definitely a toss-up. I know you've been on the ground, probably dark and early. What are you hearing from people there that are looking forward to the president's rally? What are they telling you?
They are so excited. I have to tell you, this is an adorable, amazing little town outside of Charlotte, about 20 minutes outside of Charlotte, called Gastonia, North Carolina. It's the largest city in Gaston County, and the population is 77,000, but already the rally does not take place until 7 p.m. tonight, and I would bet that population has surged by at least 10,000 already. You see these flags and such behind me, the paraphernalia, owned by two ladies, a mother and daughter, dynamic duo from Indiana who drove down from Indiana, and they are selling this. This is a bus that they purchased, and they have been traveling the country following the president. I just asked them, do you think Indiana's going to go for Trump? And they said, oh yeah, Joe Biden's going to come in third behind Donald Trump and garage sales.
Aha. Well, it's very interesting that we bring up the polls, and a lot of people, and we've talked about it before, Amanda, here on this show, a lot of people kind of skeptical of this because, bear in mind that Hillary was even further ahead than Biden is now, and she lost the election in 2016. But let's talk a little bit about strategy. The president's made several visits to North Carolina. He's been targeting some of these specific areas in North Carolina with the hopes of not only reaching some of those voters in that state, but in other key battleground states as well. Can you kind of explain that a little bit?
Yeah, he has been very active here in North Carolina. I highly doubt that this is the last time he's going to come to North Carolina with 13 days out. There are a lot of states that he's going to have to hit, notably Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, probably Minnesota again. Of course, Florida, now Iowa apparently is in play. So President Trump is going to have a packed schedule. North Carolina, I think, is interesting because he does have a daughter-in-law from South Carolina. Now, South Carolina, of course, is considered a safely red state, but Laura Trump, his daughter-in-law, is from South Carolina. She's a Carolina girl. So President Trump is going to have a great rally here on the ground. Folks here are worried about, number one, the economy, number two, healthcare, and number three, the political environment. It seems that a lot of North Carolinians are concerned with the divisive nature of politics in the year 2020.
Yeah, I want to ask you, because this is one of the questions that we're asking our viewers to share their voice today, and that is this Hunter Biden story, something that Just the News has broke. As you know, we're partners with them. We just had John Solomon on earlier in the program giving us the very latest details. So we're asking people this question, how much this factors into them casting their ballot. Is anybody there talking about this particular story? We've only got about 30 seconds remaining, but real quickly.
I'm going to be asking them about that this afternoon when we get closer to the crowds. A lot of people kind of feel like the story with Joe Biden, they have their own kitchen table issues to worry about. The involvement of Hunter Biden is problematic for them, but their biggest concern with this story is the fact that Joe Biden seemingly has been able to sell his power to the highest bidder, which is China. And that does concern them as far as national security, and that hits home.
Yeah, well, we're going to have live continued team coverage of this. Look forward to hearing from some of these viewers, hearing their reaction to this developing story. And be sure and keep it right here. Thank you, Amanda Head. Be sure and keep it right here on Real America's Voice again for live team coverage of the president's rally taking place in North Carolina tonight. It's time now to check in with Just the News team. Once again, we want to go to Carrie Sheffield joining us now with more on tomorrow's presidential debate. Again, it is the final debate before Election Day. Carrie?
Hey there, Miranda. Yes, I have an exclusive looking at justthenews.com, speaking with a Trump pollster on this issue of the debate. Now, the president has said he plans to hammer in on the issue of corruption, even though polls from the mainstream media in places like Gallup, places like Pew Research, show that the issue of corruption is not among the top issues for voters. Now, the Trump pollster told me, John McLaughlin is his name, is the reason why these issues aren't showing up around corruption in the top issues for voters is because the pollsters don't even ask about corruption. So when you look at the polling methodology of places like Gallup and Pew, they asked the voters, what are your top concerns? They gave, in the case of Gallup, 16 options. In the case of Pew, 12 options, policy issues. The issue of corruption, the issue of governance, the issue of accountability, the issue of the vice president possibly using his office to enrich himself or enrich himself after office, they're not listed. And so this is a bold move here by the president. The president plans to raise these questions to Joe Biden himself on the debate stage. The question is whether and if the independent voters, those who have not made up their mind, are going to be swayed by this issue of corruption. Now, Joe Biden has been able to position himself relative in the polls to Hillary Clinton as someone who is perceived as more likable. The president is going to try to erode this and say, no, he's corrupt just like Hillary Clinton. Go to justthenews.com for these and other stories.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Some changes, again, being made for this final debate. Normally it focuses on completely, at least the third debate, and again, that's what this was supposed to be, should focus on entirely on foreign policy. That is not the case with this one. There's also been some changes when it comes to muting the mic. Again, there's supposed to be 6 different topics being discussed, and the mics are supposed to be muted at the beginning of each of those topics, something that the Trump campaign says that it opposes. Nonetheless, the president does plan to participate in that presidential debate tomorrow. Still to come here on News On, we're going to give you an update on weather and the outlook around the country, but in particular, we're going to focus our attention on Colorado, who is just experiencing the largest wildfire, easy for me to say there, in the state's history. We'll get the status on that. Also, we're going to be sharing your voice, getting you to weigh in on some of the issues that are impacting our country today. We'll be right back. And welcome back to News On. It's been an unseasonably dry fall for much of the country. Now let's send it over to Weather Nation's Chelsea Ambrose and Kara James to see if that trend will continue.
I'm Weather Nation meteorologist Chelsea Ambrose, and some of the top weather headlines we're following include the new round of snow that is on the way. We're seeing some of those flurries out there this morning, but widespread heavy snow is going to be moving back into Montana, North and South Dakota, and once again through Minnesota and into the Great Lakes. So we have winter alerts that have been issued, likely that we see some of these winter storm watches into North and South Dakota, Minnesota being upgraded to advisories or warnings, just like what we have ongoing into Montana this morning through the day today into the day tomorrow, and then eventually expiring as the snow comes to an end Friday morning. So there have been some snow showers out there, as I've mentioned this morning. As we go into the overnight hours, though, more widespread heavy wet snow will be taking over. You can see where that deeper blue is starting to build in. That's heavier snowfall rates, meaning accumulations will be higher than the batch we've already seen, easily putting down 5 to 10 inches into parts of North Dakota and northern Minnesota. From Bismarck to Fargo, Duluth, by Thursday morning, we're going to see substantial heavy wet snow continuing, and eventually by Friday morning that works its way through. Some residual snow showers, light fluffy snow on the backside of that. But as I've mentioned, there could be some heavier totals with this second wave coming through. And then even as you look back into the mountains of Montana, we could put down 1 to 2 feet on top of what's already fallen. Now, this is just one of the top weather headlines. The other one includes some of the extreme cold that's on the way, Kara.
Yes, every one of these waves that comes through has a little bit of colder air on the backside of it, and each time that colder air is just a little bit colder, and this one is extremely cold. By the time we get to Thursday, that cold air is starting to work its way into the northwestern U.S. In some spots, like Billings and Bismarck, will have high temperatures in the 20s to around freezing, and that's just not even for one day. We're going to see that continue for a couple of days. The rest of the country, though, very warm ahead of this system, with temperatures in the 70s and 80s in the south and the east. But it's going to be so cold back in the west, and all of that will eventually be working its way to the south. The departure from average in terms of temperatures where they should be for this time of year versus what they will be with this cold blast in the northern U.S., anywhere from 20 to over 30 degrees below average. And there is the potential for record cold in some spots. And you can see single-digit temperatures for Friday's lows out towards Havre, 3 degrees, and out towards Billings, 9, and even as far south as southern Wyoming, temperatures in the teens into Friday morning. And this is just the start and the beginning of what we're going to be dealing with this cold air. All of these blue dots Thursday through Saturday represent a potential record low that could be broken. So that shows the power of this cold air, and it will be continuing to hang around for a couple of days. But it's Montana, North Dakota, and Wyoming that initially for Friday will have some of those coldest temperatures. Havre, and that forecast low of 3 would well break the current record of 8. And then as we go into Saturday, that cold air spills south. For more, go to weathernationtv.com.
Historic wildfire activity in Colorado has prompted the U.S. Forest Service to temporarily close all national forest land in some parts of that state, from the Wyoming border to the mountains west of Evergreen, which is about 40 minutes west of Denver. The national forest just remains closed. It's due to the fact that there are 3 now major fires burning within the closure, including the Cameron Peak and the Calwood fire. The decision came yesterday to try and just limit any more fires, especially as warm winds and unseasonably dry weather, as we just mentioned, has continued. The closure will be reassessed each day, but significant moisture is needed in order to change these conditions. So sad to see. All right, well, something we love to do here on this show is to share your voice, to give you a platform. As we mentioned time and time again, that is because we work for you. So today, we're going to share some of your thoughts. We asked you, what do you think about some of these changes that the debate commission made when it comes to tomorrow's final presidential debate? We mentioned some of those changes. We're going to hear what some of you have to say coming up. And who says you have to wait till Christmas in order to take advantage of some big deals? We're going to tell you which major retailer is offering some huge deals starting as early as tomorrow. And again, a reminder, the president is in North Carolina. We're going to have live team coverage of his rally beginning at 6:30 Eastern Time right here on Real America's Voice. And welcome back to News On here at America's Voice. Our goal is always to give you a platform where you feel comfortable sharing your voice. You can do that either by posting a comment to our question of the day or a video, which we really love to see. You can do that by going to our website at americasvoice.news. You can also look for me in particular on various social media platforms, everything from Facebook to Parler to CloutHub to Instagram to Twitter and LinkedIn. You can find me at Real Miranda Khan. So yesterday, here was our question. We really wanted to know, what do you think about the Debate Commission's recent changes for tomorrow's presidential debate? So we received a handful of responses, so let's jump right into it. Our first comment is from Sweet Cindy Lou, who's on Twitter. Love that. Sweet Cindy Lou Who. She says, ridiculous. I want to know what the Dems have to say about international issues. And I think the president agrees with you. He wanted it to focus more on foreign policy, which is typically what's been done in the past. Next, we heard from Jeffrey Durr from Instagram, who says, actually, this is from Facebook. He says, very unfair and biased towards Biden. The moderator has been a registered Democrat who has ties to Obama. And Don Braca says, it's a disgrace. It's not a debate. Also weighing in on the discussion, we have Aaron Shore, who says this, very excited to see Trump beat red, screaming while on mute. So excited to see that smirk face. And last but not least, we heard from Griff Potter, who said the Debate Commission has done an outstanding job in trying and in unprecedented circumstances. If one of the candidates were wheelchair-bound, accommodations will be made. In this case, it is a candidate who can't shut his mouth appropriately, so accommodations were made so he could still debate. Better than saying, you can't follow the rules, you are out. And thank you, Griff, and all of you for sharing your thoughts and your opinions here on News On Real America's Voice. We always look forward to hearing from you. Now for the moment you've all been waiting for, and that is our new question of the day. And here it is. We want to know, how impactful is the Hunter Biden story when it comes to casting your ballot? You heard from our own Amanda Head, who said earlier that she is going to be asking that question. She is on the ground in North Carolina, where the president's going to be holding a rally tonight at 7 o'clock. Again, we're going to have team coverage beginning at 6:30. But she's going to be asking that question because we really want to know. This is a story that Just the News, John Solomon, broke here, and we've been sharing it here with you on this network. Love to hear your thoughts on that. So find us on social media. Again, that's Real Miranda Khan. You can find me on Facebook, you can find me on Twitter, you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Parler, CloutHub, you name it, you can find us. Also be sure and join our online community platform at americasvoice.news. And we'd love to see a video. And don't forget, when you're on the go, to download our app. Again, want to remind everybody, the president again is in Gastonia, North Carolina today, where he's expected to hold a rally. The rally is expected to begin at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Meanwhile, our live team coverage here on A Real America's Voice will begin at 6:30 Eastern. We'll have a preview of what you can expect to hear from the president as he returns to the rally. There is still much more to come here on News On, including which mail carrier is expected to make returns easier. And welcome back to News On. I'm Miranda Khan. Here's some good news as the holidays approach. FedEx is working to make, are you ready for this? Returns easier. Isn't that good to hear? The company is going to stop requiring boxes and labels for certain return items. The package delivery giant is partnering up with e-commerce return technology company Happy Returns. The changes will allow customers to return some products in person, again, with no label or box. And the best part is the process features an immediate refund or exchange from participating retailers. See? The in-person return service will be available at upwards of 2,000 FedEx locations across the U.S. That includes 343 Walmart stores with FedEx stations inside. The two companies say the service is going to start in Los Angeles, and then it will expand nationwide by the end of this month. There will be at least one participating FedEx location in every state. Why did it take so long? Really? Anyway, I'm just happy this is happening, as I'm sure you are. So, speaking of the holidays, Halloween is not even here. Yet this shouldn't surprise some of you. Lowe's is already kicking off its Christmas holiday shopping specials. I like seeing the shopping specials. That's the key word. The home improvement chain is starting its new Seasons of Savings sale Thursday. That's right, this Thursday. The box retailer believes that the holiday shopping season this year will be unlike any other because of the pandemic. Instead of a traditional Black Friday sale, Lowe's will offer daily online-only cyber steals, again, starting tomorrow through December 2nd. So with many Americans spending more time at home because of COVID, Lowe's is encouraging you this season to give gifts for the home. The home improvement chain is also planning to offer gifts you might not expect from them to become more of a one-stop shop for the holidays. But one thing that won't change, Lowe's will still be closed for Thanksgiving so its associates can spend time with their families. And personally, I'm happy to see that. That is like my favorite holiday. You should be spending time with your families. Although maybe some of you could argue you're spending too much time because of the pandemic. All right, the first space station crew to launch during a pandemic is returning to Earth today. NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy and 2 Russian cosmonauts launched to the International Space Station back in April 9th. That was just weeks after the World Health Organization declared the pandemic. It's set to land about close to 11 o'clock Eastern time. They spent about close to 200 days in space, completing more than 3,000 orbits around the Earth and traveling, 83 million miles, give or take. All right, now here's a story that as a Floridian, I'm pretty familiar with, but a new study reports Florida's famous frozen falling lizards appear to be, well, adapting for those cooler temperatures. Longtime South Florida residents are familiar with how once the temperature drops to the 40s, well, many of these lizards, as you can see, just fall out of the trees. The cold-blooded animals don't literally freeze, though, but they become so stiff that they can't actually, well, they can't hold on to their perch. Most of the reptiles affected are non-native tropical species like iguanas who flourish in the Florida sun on warmer days. Now, a University of Miami study published in the journal Biology Letters Tuesday reports that the lizards are becoming, well, a little more cold tolerant. Why it's happening, well, that remains to be seen. They're still digging into that, whether it's an adaptation or evolution, or maybe the lizards are just getting more acclimated or used to being cold. Who knows? We'll find out. But the research continues to see if we are in fact witnessing evolution. Isn't that kind of cool if we are? In real time, which could of course lead to better understanding of other species. Anyway, it's cool. And that will do it for this edition of News On. As always, you can follow us on social media and our own. Join the community page, which you can find on our website at americasvoice.news. Again, just another reminder, we're going to have live team coverage of the president's rally taking place in Gastonia, North Carolina. That's beginning at 6:30 Eastern. The president is expected to speak at 7 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Be sure to answer our question by posting a video or a comment on our social media pages. We'll see you back here tomorrow at noon Eastern. Stay tuned for America's Voice Live coming up next.
studios. It's America's Voice Live with Tudor Dixon and Steve Gruber. America's Voice Live.
Thank you for watching America's Voice Live this Wednesday, October 21st, 2020. I'm Tudor Dixon, joined by Steve Gruber. Steve, let's take a look at today's top stories.
Well, thanks, Tudor. Still no denial from the Biden camp that the laptop left at a Delaware computer repair shop is Hunter Biden's, but we do now have corroboration between the Director of National Intelligence, the FBI, and DOJ that it is not some Russian disinformation. It is genuine.
In a stunning move, the Pope has broken with the Catholic Church's long-standing position opposing same-sex marriage and is now calling for the recognition of same-sex civil union laws.
And despite the best efforts of Democrats to stall or prevent the confirmation of Judge Amy Coney Barrett, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has announced the Senate vote to confirm her has been set for Monday, October 26th.
And the second and final debate will take place tomorrow between President Trump and Joe Biden, less than 2 weeks from Election Day. Let's take a look at the election countdown.
Well, that's right, Tudor. Just 13 days left until the majority of Americans will go to the polls. We're somewhere between 30 and 40 million Americans that have cast their ballots already, but the big day is still November the 3rd. We'll keep a close eye on that. Our top story continues to be Hunter Biden's laptop, now in the possession of not only the FBI, but also Delaware State Police. Rudy Giuliani, personal lawyer to the president and former mayor of New York City, says he turned over the laptop, and it has materials that he says involve underage girls. This is why the FBI is looking at the possibility of child pornography charges and more. There's a text message I want to share, just one, to Hunter's father, in which he says the following, and he was discussing his sister-in-law, who for quite some time, I'm quoting Rudy Giuliani now, was his lover. He says, she told my therapist that I was sexually inappropriate. This would have been with an unnamed 14-year-old girl that Hunter Biden apparently had an ongoing relationship. Sexually inappropriate, according to the text, according to what Rudy Giuliani is saying. And again, nobody is denying any of this. Nobody is denying it from the Biden camp that it's not genuine, that it's not real. This is a big problem, a growing problem, because it's not going away, and more information continues to trickle out. And the idea that somehow it's Russian disinformation was put to rest by the Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, already this week. Here it is.
Let me be clear. The intelligence community doesn't believe that because there's no intelligence that supports that. And we have shared no intelligence with Chairman Schiff or any other member of Congress that Hunter Biden's laptop is part of some Russian disinformation campaign. It's simply not true.
So despite the best efforts of those in the Twitterverse and Facebook and social media in general, this story is still making its rounds and having an impact. And let's be clear, if there is child pornography involved, this could get much worse before it gets any better. Tudor?
Absolutely. And the president says that there is so much corruption and potential criminal activity involved, and noted on this laptop that he is calling on Attorney General William Barr to investigate.
We've got to get the Attorney General to act. He's got to act, and he's got to act fast. He's got to appoint somebody. This is major corruption, and this has to be known about before the election. And by the way, we're doing very well. We're going to win the election. We're doing very well.
He wants this done before the election, Steve. Meanwhile, mainstream media is still downplaying the importance of this laptop.
Sure. Now, Joe Biden did stick his head out to get some air from his basement here just yesterday. Now, as you know, he has called a lid prior to tomorrow's final debate, the second and final debate. As you know, the number 2 was canceled because of concerns over the COVID-19 infection of the president. But Joe Biden did stick his head out long enough to answer a few questions. And even though his handlers tried to protect him, people want to know answers about this laptop. Is it real? Is it genuine? Did you have connections, Mr. Vice President, to Burisma? Did your son arrange for meetings for them to come to the White House and see you directly? Are you the big guy mentioned in some of these emails and some of these conversations? Joe Biden almost got away without answering a question, but then this happened.
Adrian, that's all the time we have.
I just have one more question because, Mr. Vice President, it affects Wisconsin.
So Wisconsin's Republican Senator Ron Johnson put out a statement on Homeland Security letterhead saying Hunter Biden, together with other Biden family members, profited off the Biden name. Is there any legitimacy to Senator Johnson's claims?
None whatsoever. This is the same garbage Rudy Giuliani, Trump's henchman. It's the last-ditch effort in this desperate campaign to smear me and my family. Even the man who served with him on that committee, the former nominee for the Republican Party, said there's no basis to this. And, you know, and the vast majority of the intelligence people have come out and said there's no basis at all. Ron should be ashamed of himself.
I, for one, have not seen a single intelligence individual come out and say there's nothing to this. In fact, the FBI, the DOJ, the Director of National Intelligence have all said this is credible, it's authentic, it's genuine. You notice there in his denial, he didn't say this laptop is not real. He did not say the specifics are not accurate. He said it's a smear job and that all of these unnamed people have apparently discredited it. Mr. Biden, please share with America and the world, if you would, sir, who are these sources that are discrediting the laptop that appears to be genuine? Because still, no denials about the fact that the laptop was taken to a computer repair shop in Delaware. No denial that Hunter Biden's personal lawyer went and demanded its return. No denial that the FBI has that laptop. No denial of the stories that ran in the New York Post or in the Daily Mail. No denial whatsoever. This is an important story. People want answers from Wisconsin, like we heard that reporter ask, to the entire nation. We'll find out, because I am quite sure, Tudor, that come tomorrow in Nashville, Tennessee, in the final debate, whether or not Kristen Welker wants it to happen or not, and whether or not her finger is on the mute button, I am going to guess that President Trump is going to mention more than a few times the concerns over Joe Biden being compromised by the Ukraine, by Russia, by China, and the criminal enterprises, he calls it, over that laptop from hell. Tudor?
I'm quite sure of it as well. Now, we know that the debate has changed a little bit from what traditionally the third debate is. Traditionally, there is a focus on foreign policy. That is not going to be the focus of tomorrow night's debate. We do have the issue of muting mics, but a lot of folks are saying that could play to the president's advantage here, because the vice president will be muted while the president has 2 uninterrupted minutes. And this is something that he can talk about at whatever length he wants to during that time. He can discuss Hunter Biden's laptop. He can discuss the contents. And I'm very sure that that is probably a lot of what this president will do. He will push back. It will be interesting to see how the former vice president responds. As you saw in that interview just there, he does get very fired up when you talk about his family. He gets feisty. He pushes back. So this could anger the former vice president, but you know the president will have his 2 minutes. He will use them as he pleases, Steve.
And I suggest he tread very carefully, Mr. Biden, in the likelihood now, as we see the contents of this laptop trickle out, if you issue a blanket denial that it's not real, when that's not being said by the FBI, that's not being said by the DOJ, and that's not being said by the Director of National Intelligence, seems like he is tap dancing down a razor blade. Now, for the topics that we are going to see tomorrow, we have those for you here, because Kristen Welker, apparently in conjunction with the Commission on Presidential Debates, came up with a new list of topics which look amazingly like the first debate. Fighting COVID-19, American families, race in America, where I am sure they're going to ask Donald Trump about white supremacy again. Climate change, of course, a darling of the left. National security, where you can talk about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden being compromised. And, of course, leadership on the list here. But it does look remarkably like the very first debate, and not like the debate we were supposed to get in Nashville for the final debate, when we were supposed to hear about foreign policy. But either way, national security, the president will use that umbrella to get his message out. Tudor?
And big news as we get closer and closer to Election Day, we are also getting closer to that vote for Judge Amy Coney Barrett. Senator Mitch McConnell has come out and said that vote is set for October 26th. That's Monday. Of course, Democrats have come out and said that this is the most rushed this process has ever been. However, a lot of Republicans would disagree with that. Stay tuned, because after this break, we'll be back with John Schnatter, the founder of Papa John's Pizza. Welcome back to America's Voice Live. Steve, as we're talking about all of this unraveling with Hunter Biden right now, the significance of just these text messages about a young 14-year-old girl in an administration that right now is putting hundreds of millions of dollars into sex trafficking. And we know that Hunter Biden has already been connected to sex trafficking. Now we have these folks that are coming out and telling the president he has to disavow QAnon. I'm sure you've heard these stories that he has to disavow QAnon, say that this is a conspiracy theory. And it's well known for going after the deep state and pedophilia. Now they say that this does not occur in the deep state. This would say something different, Steve, when we're hearing that Hunter Biden had an ongoing relationship with a 14-year-old girl, but not just one 14-year-old girl. There are several photos, according to Rudy Giuliani, on this laptop of several young females that are well underage in compromising positions, which would indicate that he has child pornography on this laptop, also a criminal act. So when the president says that he wants AG Barr going after this, we all know this is a very sensitive issue for this president. He has come out from day one and said he would fight against sex trafficking, he would fight against pedophilia and the abuse of children. This is going to be a big deal for him.
It is potentially damaging to the election prospects of Joe Biden. The brand new polling from the IBD TIP poll is very telling as it is today. It's the most accurate poll from 2016, according to some. It's one of the two polls that I look at closely each day. IBD TIP now shows that Joe Biden's approval with voters has fallen dramatically in just the last 7 days. He's fallen to 48.1%, the president at 45.8%, meaning they are separated now by just 2.3%. Now, I want to remind you, in 2016, Hillary Clinton led in the IBD TIP poll by 2.1% on Election Day. So they're right about where they were on Election Day. Now, with 13 days to go and a debate tomorrow night, a lot of things can happen, of course. A lot of changes can happen. A day is an eternity in politics. But what you're saying, Tudor, is very true. If damning evidence comes rolling out from the laptop of Hunter Biden in the last few moments of this campaign, it could change enough votes to change the outcome of this election. We've already seen that new polling shows that 53% of Americans, according to Gallup, believe that Joe Biden should have seen the conflict of interest and that him working with Ukraine and his son was a conflict of interest. That's what the majority of Americans think already. So as you look at the fact that we have just 13 days to go, will this be an October surprise? Obviously, the liberal media, the Democrats working overtime to try to discredit this, call it Russian disinformation, and to discredit Rudy Giuliani. It's amazing to me. Rudy Giuliani was America's mayor, a go-to guy, a former federal prosecutor. And right here on this program told us both, Tudor, that he's never seen a better RICO case with evidence in his life. And I'm not talking about the child pornography questions. I'm talking about the direct connections between Ukraine, payments to Hunter Biden, and then directives that apparently lead money back to Joe Biden himself, not to mention James Biden, his brother, his sister-in-law, and a host of other folks in Biden world, all collecting money and getting handsome payments. I mean, let's look at all the money that's transferred over, tens of millions of dollars. And again, this laptop not going into that good night easily. And again, we're quite sure that come tomorrow, President Trump, given that 2 minutes with Joe Biden's mic muted, how many times has that happened? 6? That gives him 12 unadulterated minutes to talk about Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, dirty deals, and possibly child pornography. Tudor?
Let me ask you something, because we had a poll come out yesterday, a Rasmussen poll come out yesterday, and showing Ohio is just 1 percentage point away if you're adding in people who are leaning toward Trump. So you have Biden at 49%, you have Trump at 47%, but if you add that other one in, you have them just 1% apart from one another. So you have 48 and you have Trump at 47. You have with the undecided, you have 2 percentage points. Ohio, if Ohio goes for Trump right now, we're seeing Michigan, we're seeing Florida leaning toward Trump. Just yesterday, there was a massive truck parade in Miami. In Miami, of all places, you have a massive truck parade for the president. You have Ohio going pretty much for the president at this point. Now, the question mark, of course, is Pennsylvania. People are very upset about what happened with Pennsylvania. What do you think will happen?
Let me give you some of the numbers that really matter right now, Tudor, and to everybody watching. You mentioned Ohio. Ohio has had some recent polling showing the president ahead. I would expect the president to repeat in Ohio, and no Republican has been elected any time in recent times without carrying Ohio. I would suspect he does it. So I'm going to go with the given. He's ahead in several polls in Florida. The average from Real Clear Politics shows that it's very close, but I'm going to say the president carries Florida. He carries Ohio because as you look at all of those polls, you'll find somewhere between 2.5% and 3.5% undecided. I believe most of those folks are going to break for the president. Now, in North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, if you look at October 21st, 2016, and look at the lead that Hillary Clinton had on this date 4 years ago and compare it to Joe Biden, those 5 states right off the top of my head, Joe Biden is doing significantly worse. Let me give you one example. Pennsylvania, key state, 20 electoral votes. Key to the president's victory in 2016. On this date in 2016, Hillary Clinton had a lead of 7.2%. Today, Joe Biden has a lead of 3.8%. That's the Real Clear Politics average. And so even if you don't like polls, don't believe in polls, don't follow polls, the trend is quite clear. Joe Biden is much weaker as a candidate than Hillary Clinton. It's undeniable.
Well, when you have President Obama coming out and campaigning for him, it's a sign that they're trying to bring in the big guns to get the voice out there, because generally past presidents don't campaign for the next guy. But here we have a different election. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.